Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining today's Microsoft Marketplace community event. My name is Justin Royal. I'm the Marketplace community lead for our partner community, and I wanted to welcome you all to today's event. Today, we have a special session for you focused on AI-powered automation for Marketplace private offers and IP co-sell. We are being joined by our friend Jon Yoo over at Suger. And I'll pass it over to Jon in just a second. But before we get started, just wanted to remind everybody, this is a live session today. And so we certainly welcome your Q&A. We will have time at the end of today's session for answering your questions. If you are watching this session on demand after today's event ends, we can still take your questions, happy to answer them, but we encourage you to post those questions in our actual Marketplace community discussion board. If you are joining us live, you can ask questions on the event page. If you're joining us on demand, post your questions in the community discussion board. And the link is on the screen here. It's aka.ms/community/marketplace. If you're not a member of the community already, definitely encourage you to join. We've got plenty of Marketplace resources, including other events to help you at every stage of your journey on Marketplace. And with that being said, I will go ahead and pass it over to Jon. Thanks, Jon, for joining us, and let's go.
Thanks so much for having me, Justin. Great to meet everyone, and thanks again for the time, especially early in the morning. As a quick, overview of who we are, what Suger does, and maybe what led us to even start this. Well, first and foremost, Suger is a cloud marketplace accelerator. So we're really focused on how do we help companies get started, scale, and operationalize across cloud partnerships and marketplace, specifically Azure. So that goes into deep integrations with your existing tech stack, such as your CRM tools like Salesforce, HubSpot, Dynamics, to productivity tools like Teams or Slack, to ERP systems. And how do we really focus on simplifying your marketplace operations so that you can really scale through what is the fastest growing revenue channel that we've seen. A little bit about me. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Suger. We started the company about 4 years ago, helping a lot of companies such as Snowflake or Glean, or a lot of cybersecurity companies as well. I come from a RevOps world, having done that at Salesforce, but my co-founder and CTO, Cheng Jun, is the true domain expert in this space, as he was the tech lead at Confluent, helping build their own internal hyperscaler operations. And they were dealing with 10 engineers and 20 off people who are managing the inflows and outflows of data. And so what we are really here to talk about is, one, why should you even care about Microsoft Marketplace, but also what are the ways that you can actually scale and operationalize without having to grow the team at a linear scale compared to what will be an exponential growth through these marketplaces. So first and foremost, these stats are super interesting. So there's projected to be $163 billion in marketplace sales by 2030, representing a 29% CAGR. And over the past 5 years, we're roughly around 40 to 50 billion. That's been a number that has been doubling every year for the past couple of years. The reason why is that a lot of participants see tremendous benefits, such as 75% reporting that they close sales faster, 88% reporting greater revenue growth, enough to the point that you're starting to see this wave of adoption going from, crossing the chasm, the early adopter phase, to what is now becoming more mainstream, as people are seeing this as, how do I meet the buyer where they are hosted, where they have budget, and really meeting them where they buy. And so specifically, I think one big trend that's been happening is that there's been this new generation of millennial buyers. They're really used to consumer products such as Amazon.com or Instacart, where they can buy goods and services without actually having to, go through all the pain and efforts of, traditional B2B sales. And so when that is happening, people are increasingly looking to these digital marketplaces to procure new software solutions. A big, benefit that you'll probably hear from everyone is Mac burn down. So a buyer has roughly, however much in cloud budget, and they're actually able to leverage that to purchase third-party software solutions on these marketplaces. Specifically, I believe the cloud commitment backlog is in the trillions today, roughly 1.3, and expected to increase $2.3 trillion. And that represents the budget that, as sellers, you'd be able to participate in or gain access to. The final piece specifically on this is that there is faster security and vendor onboarding path. The reason is a lot of these enterprise buyers already trust the solutions on Azure Marketplace because they view that it is, already been vetted by Microsoft. It is a legitimate corporation. There's different pieces like standard contracts that allow you to actually, focus on purchasing and selling solutions a lot quicker. Now, what does that unlock for you, especially around Microsoft go-to-market, is that, Microsoft has a ton of rewards programs that you may be able to qualify for, representing real dollars to your organization. There's a repeatable channel with a measurable performance. So we're seeing, as I mentioned, around these, billions that are going through marketplace. Well, we're seeing that on our end as well, where there's a couple of our customers that have done over $1 billion through Microsoft Marketplace and continue to scale. And really what they focus on is how do we actually operationalize this so that we can do a lot more given all the benefits that are coming with this. Now, but if you really want to scale on these marketplaces, the main thing to note is that the complexity grows exponentially over time. So this chart is an example of how a lot of our customers go through their marketplace journey. They usually get started on Microsoft Marketplace because they want to close more deals. They view it as a revenue generating channel. Oftentimes it is buyer driven, where a buyer says, hey, I have this back that I really want to leverage as part of my broader digital transformation cloud story. Is there any way that I can procure your solution through Microsoft Marketplace? And so that gets them on a journey to go through Marketplace, getting a transactable offer available on Microsoft Marketplace and start to transact a couple times. And naturally, they see such a value that they want to start co-selling with Microsoft sellers. If I'm a cloud migration consulting partner and I can co-sell with Microsoft on migrating any customers from on-prem to Azure, how do I actually do this with a partner such as Microsoft, who already owns a lot of the relationship with the C-suite of that given customer? And then naturally, when you start to co-sell and you need integrations into your existing CRM, there's a system component of how do I make sure that I can reconcile across multiple systems. And then as the scale continues and the volume increases, they really focus around, now, how do I intelligently orchestrate these actions? How do I get advanced insights so that I know where I can focus my time? And ideally, or is there parts of AI that can really automate this process because I'm being asked to do more without commensurate level of investment from the organization? And so, in today's discussion, I'll be going through briefly around each of those pieces and how, you should be thinking about in terms of a checklist, what are the different personas that I need to involve, or stakeholders rather, and where can I start to leverage AI so that we can work smarter? The first thing that you should really be thinking about is the fact that it takes a village, because everything around cloud partnership, co-sell, and marketplace spans the entire life cycle of a transaction. So some of it could be around the quoting system. How does a private offer actually integrate into the existing quoting system so that your deal desk team doesn't create a ton of friction as you start to go through Microsoft Marketplace? There's a piece around finance of, hey, there's billing disbursements. Our organization is very much used to direct invoicing, but because the revenue is going through our indirect channel, what does that mean for us? And how do I make sure that this ties out to our core accounting system so that we can pass audits for when that time comes? And then of course, how do you get this really into, front and center into your sales team, as well as your executives, so that it can garner more investments into this business and you're actually seeing the partnership translate into revenue for the organization? These are all pieces that is so important to be aware of, because if you try to do everything yourself, it will end not so great. But when you do get exec level buy-in from the different cross-functional partners such as sales ops, finance, sales, even customer support, it can really heighten your ability to succeed in this channel and gain all the benefits. So I'll start with the first part in that life cycle, or in the journey of a given seller on Marketplace. The first part is, how do I get live? How do I get a transactable offer as quickly as possible? This is a part that we certainly see, a lot of folks struggle with. I mean, there's of course a system side of things of how do you actually integrate your backend system, your product or your billing systems into Marketplace. But a big part is, how do I make sure that I represent our product or organization as well as we can at this digital storefront? So some of the pieces that we've seen the best do it is, they use AI to scrape the website to give you proactive alerts if there's any changes that are happening to the website, or specifically around pricing. If your website pricing shows X dollars per unit, but then Marketplace shows Y, you never want that to create channel conflict. And so the listing component is there's a couple different elements. One, it has to be incredibly consistent with the broader messaging and positioning and pricing that exists across, the internet. But then second, how do you actually optimize this so that it's driving the most amount of page listing views by potential buyers on these marketplaces? Things like, hey, are my descriptions correct? Do I have linked the right resources so that they can learn more about my product, before they click contact us? These are all pieces that your product marketing team might be thinking about when they are on, for the website. How do you actually bring that over to the marketplace so that it can stay consistent and you're making sure that you're optimizing how your product comes across? With AI research, that is a lot easier to do in terms of staying up to date. Now, let's say you already have a transactable offer and you are thinking about, how do I scale this through this motion? Well, the core piece that you need to do is making sure that workflows start where reps are already working, or just your broader cross-functional partners are already working. As a great example, the number one piece where people focus on is CRM, because that is where sales folks works and RevOps system works, and is usually the single source of truth for a lot of customer relationship data that Marketplace goes into. Similarly, there's HubSpot, there's Microsoft Dynamics, which we see a lot of people using. But the key part is, besides, or the key challenge of making sure that this is reflected in the CRM is integration into your CRM, making sure that all the data fields are mapped correctly. And that could often lead to a lot of challenges for our, for various participants on Marketplace, because one, you have to figure out how the field mapping works. And if anything changes within your CRM, such as net new fields or changes to your data schema or new custom objects that are being created, how do you make sure that the integration doesn't break and that your system keeps up to date with any changes on the Microsoft side as well? And so this is where AI does come into play, where you can leverage AI to automate the field mapping process based on best guesses, where AI can actually read your Salesforce schemas, for example, and be able to map it to the correct fields in Microsoft, or flag any new updates or changes that were made to the Microsoft Partner Network, such as incremental, required fields that you can actually go and not have it disrupt your business. The next part, beyond making sure that you are working in the place that your broader stakeholders work, is being a lot smarter around how do you go to market. We actually see quite often the number one mistake that Microsoft partners make is share 1,000 opportunities and give up on co-selling because they see that no one is responding to them, or they're not seeing incremental leads that are driven out of this. And the coaching that we give to so many of our customers is, you have to have a strategy. You can't spray and pray, and praying is not a strategy. And you have to be incredibly data oriented around even deciding which accounts to co-sell with Microsoft for, or understanding the co-sell landscape. So just as an example, on the left-hand side, like Suger has these AI research scores where you're able to see things like engagement scores, usage levels. There's a couple different intent variables that we really look at. And what we do, and some of our customers do, or most of our customers, are actually map these scores against their account list. So let's say you have $100 million in pipeline. Well, of those, 20 million has a high Azure engagement score, which means that this likelihood of success on co-selling with Microsoft may yield a higher result. And we see people really taking this into account during the account mapping process or account planning at the beginning of the year to understand what is my fastest route to making sure that this deal closes. And then once the co-sell referrals, the co-sell engagement is really working, people want to be able to chat with their data, such as who are the top Microsoft reps who have been leaning in with us, that have been enabled on our product, and the metrics speak for it. And so natural language, using AI, you should be able to get basically a heat map of all the different, geos or teams, verticals that you are doing incredibly well in on the Microsoft co-selling, so that you're able to focus your time, the limited time that you have, to make sure that you're driving the best engagement possible. The last piece of this is going back to the spray and pray. That is a single ticket or single one-way road to losing the trust, because the number one feedback that I get from a lot of the Microsoft sellers is, hey, I have 1,000 SDCs reaching out to me asking, can I get introduction to your customer list? There has to be some way to stand out, and that can only happen when you are truly focused on with a coherent strategy of how you want to reach Microsoft sellers and get the most out of the relationship. Some of the other pieces, so that's a little bit more around like external account mapping and prospecting, but this is an example of workflows that we really recommend any participants on Marketplace to be thinking about, which is, how do we drive internal adoption? So first and foremost, you have to make sure that it's living in this, the tools, they work. So we've built workflows for some customers, for example, where anytime that there is a referral, it immediately sends a Slack or Teams notification to the sales rep associated with that given opportunity, so that they understand, hey, here's the benefits, here's the way that you should be talking with Microsoft sellers, here's the things to stay away from, the better together story, all that good stuff. And then we have automated email sequencing so that it is actually referencing contextual data. The reason why contextual data is so important is going back to the point of, there's a lot of noise in the co-sell ecosystem. How do you stand out? Well, you want to be incredibly specific about the type of relationship or engagement that has been done with that given individual, and remind them of what your product does and what Microsoft consumption that it drives, the better together story is mentioned. And then finally, part of the workflow is making sure that all of the updates are staying synced within your CRM, so that the first line managers up to the CRO level are able to actually review what is the performance of partner source, partner influenced pipeline, and they're actually able to see the level of activity that has been driven to really help move this deal across. And then finally, I never want to ignore the finance and RevOps folks, just because I come from that world. Whenever there are different revenue streams that have different billing policies, it is incredibly, incredibly difficult to have to reconcile across these different systems or sources of truths. And so what we strongly recommend to our customers and broader is, make sure that you have the right data pipeline to be able to see not just pipeline and engagement, but actual revenue disbursement data, so that your finance team is not chasing you down in the middle of the night asking you, hey, we have not been dispersed for this deal yet. Do you know the status? And then you're chasing down a rabbit hole trying to figure out which system is correct, et cetera. And this is a great use case of AI, where you can actually pipe all that information into a data warehouse or some BI tool and be able to speak in natural language to understand what are all the top disbursements that are late, and what are the actions that I need to take. Can you actually take those actions for me? such as sending an email, submitting a ticket, whatever it may be. And that is a number one piece that we really focus with or kind of the main use case that people use our like Sugar's AI chatbot for, to understand their rev rec process. Finally, a big focus is you have to make sure that you have a lot of the pieces tied up before you start your Microsoft journey, or at least make your stakeholders aware of what needs to happen. So such as, what are the approval workflows that are required when a deal is going through Marketplace? Do I have the right executive level buy-in, so that we have different eligibility criteria that are created earlier in the process, like quoting? And on the legal side, do I have to make sure that certain legal terms are baked into Marketplace deals? There's so many pieces, such as even sales comp. Should we be comping on a, comp neutral, as in the internal rep is not penalized for a deal going through Marketplace, which may create a lot of channel conflict. And so we strongly recommend that you are proactive about getting on these marketplaces and co-selling with Microsoft, and making sure that you have a checklist that you can go through. This is available to anyone under the sun, so please reach out if there's any help that Sugar can do to prepare you for being successful on Microsoft Marketplace. Knox and Justin, that is it. I would love to answer any questions from the field if there are any.
Thank you, Jon. Great presentation, and thanks everybody for joining live. We do have time for Q&A, so everybody feel free to contribute your questions. I think we have a few coming in already. So first question for you, Jon. For companies just getting started with Marketplace, what are the most common operational challenges you see when moving from a CRM opportunity to a Marketplace private offer?
I only have 10 minutes left, right? There's quite a few. I say top of mind, especially around Marketplace private offers, are understanding deal terms. So I would break deal terms out into two pieces. One is around contract start and end dates, and then the second part being pricing. So on the contract start and end dates, it can be very challenging when you have we call it entitlement, deal. Your Salesforce may show, contract start date of December 1st, but then the entitlement or the private offer might have only been accepted on the 15th. So how does your system reconcile for that? Is your Salesforce opportunity source of truth, or is it, is it the entitlement that almost works as a digital signature? The second part being pricing. A lot of our customers, quotes tend to be really complicated. They might have 20 product lines with hundreds of SKUs, and they struggle oftentimes with figuring out, how does this convert into a transactable offer? What are the dimensions? Do each line item of a dimension, should that be a SKU or a product line, or what grouping should it be? And I think those are the two main challenges, at least in the operation side. On the kind of business side / sales side, a lot of folks struggle with figuring out how to co-sell. What are the type of asks that I should be, asking out of the Microsoft seller? How do I even hold that call? Should I be on these calls, or should as a partner manager, or should, the AE be taking that call themselves? And so they oftentimes do struggle with, how do I co-sell with Microsoft so that we can actually bring a better together story? I think that's pretty common, both ends.
Great, thank you. Complex topic for sure, but nice information. Next question: how do we automate Marketplace private offers or co-sell submissions? Can we trigger a private offer from our CRM? Can we auto-populate the co-sell form? A couple of different questions there.
Yeah, so I think automation goes into, do you have the systems prepared? So not to get too into the weeds, but does your system pick up on event notifications, such as an event being an offer being accepted or disbursement being made? So that's one. Two is, what is the automation tool that you have in place? selfishly speaking, a lot of our customers leverage our workflow builder that allows you to trigger a series of actions based on any of these events that happen, such as an offer being accepted, what needs to happen in my CRM, such as certain fields being updated, a quote being closed out, what needs to be sent out in a Slack notification to notify the finance team. Maybe there's some action that needs to happen in your ERP solutions to create a sales order. If you don't use Sugar, there are other solutions like you can, build like robotic process automation. There's Zapier, Workato that people are able to somehow provide some scaffolding around to be able to create those automations. But really do focus on what is the triggering event and how do I store that? Now, the last piece on can we auto-populate the CRM, the co-sell form? Using Sugar and a variety of other solutions, you are able to. It really goes into field mapping. It's kind of IT work by your Salesforce team that they need to go down.
Great, thank you. Next question: what typically causes IP co-sell referrals to get turned down in Partner Center? What practical steps or automation can we put into place to avoid this and ensure approval?
This is a really hard question. I'm not going to lie. I'd probably say the number one piece is people struggle oftentimes with invalidated fields. So maybe certain information is missing, maybe certain postal codes is incorrect. That's a little bit more on the mechanical side. We've actually built kind of AI functionalities to be able to flag whether something is going to get rejected. And we provide what we call AI autofix to be able to fix all the critical fields to make sure that it has the highest probability of it getting accepted. If you don't have that, I'd say the main other piece could be people do struggle oftentimes with Microsoft managed versus unmanaged accounts. So this might be a little bit too into the weeds as well, but these when you're sharing a referral, there's an option to find what is a Microsoft managed account. Like any systems, there could be 10 different records for Pepsi. 3 of them could be Microsoft managed, 7 of them might be unmanaged. And when people do share these referrals, they oftentimes do not click the unmanaged or the managed account, which means there is no actual rep on the other part that can actually that can pick up your co-sell referral. So make sure that you have the managed piece down pat.
Great advice. Thank you, John. So it looks like that's actually all of our questions. If anybody has one more in the next 15 seconds, feel free to chime in, but otherwise we will go ahead and wrap up. Thank you, John, for all your great info today. And thanks again to Sugar for joining us on this event. Everybody who joined us, make sure that you join the Marketplace community to stay updated on other events that we have. We've got plenty of opportunities for you to engage with us throughout the month. We have a series of office hours for partners where we connect community members directly to Microsoft subject matter experts. We have guest speakers like John and others come in to join us regularly as well. So if you're not a member of the community already, definitely check us out. And with that, any last closing thoughts from you, John?
No, I think the last kind of piece of advice is, be consistent. I think so many folks try Marketplace or try co-selling in fits and spurts, and they don't see immediate, return, and they give up on it. I think it really is a consistency game, and continuing to beat the drum internally and externally, and good things will happen. I mean, we have the data to support that. Looking across our customer base.
Definitely. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us and have a great day. Thanks, John. Talk to you later.
Thanks so much. Take care.